Yesterday was International Women's Day, and it was. I like when there's something like that, like a celebration where it was a Sunday and you could literally see people posting throughout the day. For me, it was a little bit of a time of reflection as I looked back, finding photos from our life, especially our life revolving around what we do for a living, which honestly, I'd say 95, not even, how many percent? I would say 98% of the models that we've represented and worked with through the years are female, are young women. And I realized too, I was like, I got into this through a hobby, and the hobby was born out of a passion that I allowed myself to follow. And it revolved around that I loved being around young women. I felt, and I continue to feel inspired, and I don't know, they just keep you on your toes. The other thing is, though, I've had other entrepreneurial endeavors besides what we're doing right now, and we're expanding on some things of what we're doing. And I realized most of what my passion has been really connected to, really involved with women of all ages. There's something, I'm a woman's woman. I have a love and a respect, and because I've gone through things, because I was a single mother, I have a heart for single mothers. Because I was a young single mother, I have a heart for that. Because I've gone through a divorce and experienced that, I have a heart for that when I see a woman going through that. Really what we do at Mother is launch young women into careers as an independent, entrepreneurial young woman, and that's fun too. And a part of that is the mindset of what that looks like. And lastly, I realized too in my other projects that it's just, I've always loved and valued women of all ages taking responsibility and building something for themselves. I grew up with a dad who was an entrepreneur. I've shared it before. He passed away suddenly when I was 19 years old. That is a foundation of so much in my life. And I think because he would tell me that the sky was the limit, I believed it. And then my mother was not an entrepreneurial woman, but she was a very determined woman. She became a widow at a very young age, in her early 50s. And she was somebody passionate about nursing, always learning. And they were the kind of people, I was raised by parents that brought people into our home. They were very much those kinds of people, and I see the ripple effect. But anyway, I was thinking about that. I was thinking about Women's History Month. I was just thinking about the celebration of women. And it was so clear to me that I want to talk about the power of female entrepreneurship. I believe it's so foundational. And one of the reasons why, even with Willa Mae, our granddaughter, from the time she was old enough to do it, we were like, let's do a lemonade stand. And of course, Jeff can't just put a table out in front of the house when we lived out in the suburbs, or now in front of our office. We had to get the special lemonade stand set up. And then a couple years ago, he had our friend design a logo for her. And then he had t-shirts printed. But really, it really was wanting her to grab a hold of what it feels like to build something for yourself, to own something for yourself. And there's something so exciting about today's world. Jeff and I talk about it all the time because he too grew up with his mother and his aunt, both entrepreneurs, to varying degrees with their daycares. And so I think that like-mindedness was one of the many things early on that Jeff and I just really gravitated towards. And as a couple, we've always been on that same page and really wanted to build something for ourselves. But I'm also married to a wonderful guy who really encourages me to keep all the other things going that are other ventures, other projects, other things, including this podcast. I'm telling you, I would not, I don't even know if would have gotten to the point where I was like, let's just do this, had he not said, I see this in you and I know that you'll be great at it. And also the encouragement in particular of our daughter, Tiana. So my point is, we all have something in us that to one degree or another could be an entrepreneurial endeavor. It could be, in today's world, there's great books out there that talk about a side hustle. I love the idea of a side hustle, and I realized back in my early days, I had a lot of side hustles until I got to the point where I could hone in on one thing. And then once we've gotten to a point in our lives where it's pretty solid, now we're taking what we've built up to this point and building out new things. The cool thing about endeavoring and doing entrepreneurial things is I do think it gets you in a mindset of one thing leading to another, which is another really exciting thing. So it could be a side hustle, it could be Poshmark, it could be Postmates, Uber. There's so many things in today's world that really there's no excuse to not have some sort of a side hustle. And we've met some really interesting people, including some really interesting women as our Uber drivers that explain that they're doing this on the side, or for some of them, they just like meeting new people. And I think that's super cool. Number two, it could be a passion project that turns into a business. Everything that we're doing today came from the passion project of, I just liked doing fashion shows at the mall. And then my friend needed hair models for her hair shows. And I loved being around all my little young teenage girls. And ironically, I'm still, some of those teenage girls who are now women and have families of their own are in my life today. And I love seeing them take on these projects and be entrepreneurial and growing and learning. It literally makes my day. And even if you've never thought of maybe doing something like that, I really encourage you to look into it. Obviously, social media gives us lots of different ways beyond that. You can do side hustles as well. I do think you learn a lot in the process. And even if one thing leads you to another, it's leading you somewhere. And there's something so beautiful about that. And more women need to have that in their lives. And if you're a mother, I think it's great for your kids to see you endeavoring and doing things, because I tell you what it will do, it will fuel them to do the same in one degree or another. Now that our kids are adults themselves, I see that in them. And even though there were times when they were younger that I would question, because there was times where I had a lot going on, I also can see the foundation of it. It gave them the bravery to try things, kind of untraditional things on their own. And also we were there to go, yes, you can do it. I'm cheering you on. And lastly, another thing, direct sales, network marketing. All throughout my adulthood, to varying degrees, I participated in that. And I look at how much I learned. I look at how the friendships and the amazing women that I met. I love the culture that a lot of women coming together, cheering each other on. Well, I mean, it's powerful. The impact, I don't think you can even measure the ripple effects of what it does. So I had my first business when I was 23, I've shared that before, called Body Heat. Got an SBA loan. Still don't know how I pulled that off, but I did. Obviously, I didn't, in hindsight, I didn't ask for enough because my business only lasted for a year. But you know what? I look back at that young 23-year-old Mary Monahan, and I'm like, you did it, girl. Good for you. And even though I was kind of crushed and hurt, and for a little bit I kind of had my tail between my legs and felt like a failure, I still can see how it led me to other entrepreneurial things that were great. Then I was involved with a company called Jaffer Cosmetics. Then there was a time where I was the queen of side hustle. I did window displays at the mall. I taught aerobic classes at the YMCA. I built up a following that at one point I was having like 80, 90 people. They had to move our classes into the gymnasium because there was 80, 90 people showing up for my aerobic classes. On the side, I would do custom signs at the mall because at that point I had young kids at home, but I look at how it set in motion this pattern of always thinking. Started doing the modeling thing, that was called the Image Group. The Image Group also led to me doing consulting work. I did image consulting work in the 80s and the 90s where I would go into corporations and speak, and I worked with a consulting firm that worked with TV anchors, and I learned a lot. And I also see how that experience in looking at somebody and kind of grooming and developing them impacted how eventually we work with our models in grooming and developing them. That led to going to a modeling convention. I soon realized, okay, that's not for me. I don't think that's good. Then we started something called Genesis, which was our own small Iowa version of a modeling convention, but done extremely affordably, and we had huge success stories that came out of that. That led to moving to St. Louis. We created something called Model Truth. It was a DVD. I think I've talked about that before. We both thought it was gonna be this huge thing. It didn't become a huge thing, but that's okay. During that time, I became a regional vice president with Arbonne, which again, I'm gonna be sharing more about that, but I'm keeping this to my 15 minutes. And that led to Mother. We wanted to be the best mother agents in the United States, and Tribute became a celebration of that. And now we're thinking of new projects. I know you have entrepreneurial ideas inside of you. The one thing that I wanted for Christmas was I wanted to get the masterclass monthly subscription so that I could learn. And I love being a learner. I love following entrepreneurial people, creative people. I just want to be a lifelong learner. I think it's really important. And I watched the masterclass I'm halfway through with Sarah Blakely, who started Spanx. It's a great masterclass. Basically, she found a solution to a problem. She went after it. I love when you really hear about what it took for her to get to where she is today. This woman is a hustler, go-getter. I mean, I'm really impressed. And it made me think of the sacrifice that she did. She was so willing to go there and be all in. And I read a quote today that Michael Hyatt had posted a few years ago. If you don't sacrifice for what you want becomes the sacrifice. So in today's world, you could start writing, you could start a podcast yourself, you could start a blog. There's so many things that you could do. If you're not doing anything in that arena, all I'm asking you to do is allow your mind to kind of go there. Let your, the overthinking go away and start writing things down, because I promise you, if you get in the entrepreneurial mindset as a woman, and then you use that to help build up other women, there is nothing like it. There really isn't. And you'll be surprised who you inspire along the way. And at the end of the day, isn't that one of the most important things that we do in this life? So I hope this triggers you to come up with an idea, come up with a concept, start doing something. Let it, even if it's starting with a hobby that leads to something more, I promise you won't be disappointed. Thank you for listening. Have a terrific week. And if you come up with a great idea, I'd love to hear so we can encourage you and support you in your endeavor. I'll talk to you next Monday.